next piece that we're going to talk about is really kind of digging into this target market and assessing who you're speaking to. And I always tell people, when you are trying to reach everyone, you end up touching no one at all. I hate to say this out loud, but one of my biggest pet peeves is when people come in for a consultation meeting and I say, tell me about your target market. And they say, oh, well, anybody with grass. And I'm like, no, not anybody with grass. That can't be your target market because not everybody can afford mowing services, right? So there has to be a differentiation there between everybody with grass and people who can afford mowing services, or people who are busy professionals that don't mow their lawn. So understanding that you can talk to lots of different people, but we need to talk to them individually as if they are individuals, not as if they are one big person trying to reach everyone. Sometimes that can work if you're doing a mass media type of advertisement, such as radio or TV. However, on the web, you guys all know, because we are trained to do this, if you don't like what you see, you just click and you go someplace else, and it's super easy. It's like easier than switching a radio station, easier than changing the channel. So we're programmed to do that, and we're going to leave if it's not interesting to us. So making sure that we're really talking to people like they're people. They're not everyone. They're a person with a specific challenge who need us for something. So who are we speaking to? As you can see, there are all kinds of different things that play in to make a person who they are, and that's what these outer bubbles are. And what everyone is sharing right now within your company or organization is an interest, right? But there's lots of different things that can impact the way that they view that interest or how they're approaching it. So knowing how these different people think is important to reach out to them personally. One that I always like to mention is education level, because education level means two things. It means how educated are they, as in did they go to high school or not, but then two, it means how educated are they about what you do, about your product or service. So if they're very low, if they don't understand what you do at all, or even that what you do exists, then that's a lot different than if they come to you and they already know that they're ready to use your product or service because they're fully educated about what you do. And you may have various levels of education throughout your target market, and that is okay, and we will talk about how to address that in a moment. Alrighty, so we're going to talk a little bit about communication style. Has anybody had DISC training? I bet that some of you guys have. You can chat me. So we're going to do a really quick overview of what DISC is. So DISC is a communication style profiling test, right? And it puts people into 4 categories, D, I, S, or C. And there is not good, there is not bad, there just is. People interpret the world in different ways, they communicate in different ways, and it isn't bad if you're one or good if you're another. What is important is that you cultivate an awareness of who you're speaking to and how they do interpret the world around them, so that you're not turning them off with your first sentence. So as I go through these different profiles, what I would like you to do, if you have your worksheet with you, is color in the boxes that are you. So you're going to just, there's little check boxes there. And I'm going to describe these different communication styles to you. You'll color in what's you, okay? So there's D's. And if you do any business-to-business work, you have definitely worked with a D. I work with D's all the time. I think they're great. They can be challenging, but they're great all at the same time. So they're very strong-willed and competitive people. They're extremely independent. A lot of salespeople could be Ds because they don't get rattled nearly as easily. It's like they have this kind of defense of like, yeah, sure, all right. You know, if you hear no all the time every day, you kind of have to have this defense mechanism of, all right, whatever, move on to the next one. So they're pretty decisive people. So a lot of business owners, some doctors, salespeople tend to be Ds. Then we have Is, and Is are just, they could make friends with a rock. Like there's no question about it. They see butterflies and rainbows. They're just really positive, generally, people. And the nice thing about Is is, and they have this very powerful trait that they're very persuasive. They have all this energy. They give off all this energy, and people sort of gravitate towards that and want to follow them generally, unless you're really put off by that. But then, too, they can be super disorganized, and they're very concerned with other people because they want other people to like them. So they're still sort of self-centered in that way. Now, S's are really concerned with other people, but in a very non-self-serving way. They just want to make sure that you're okay. They're very concerned about taking care of everyone around them. So support staff, nurses, secretaries, those types of roles are great when filled by S's because they are just so concerned with making sure that you're okay. And so that means they really go out of their way to take care of you. I always say that this is the type of person you want to have as your best friend or your mom because they're great. But the challenge with an S is that it takes them longer to decide that you are awesome and longer to buy into you. And if you do turn them off, they're probably not going to say anything. They'll just quietly fade into the background. So if you have a lot of S's as clients, when they stop talking, that's when you need to start asking questions and making sure that everything's okay, because they aren't going to say anything if everything isn't okay. Okay, and then we have our C's, and our C's they're my accountant. If your accountant isn't a C, I'm not really sure what they're doing in accounting, because they have to, they're precise and exact. They follow the rules. They're disciplined, very systematic people. And my daughter is a C. She's 3 years old, and she's like, no, this is the order that we do things in. First, we have dinner. Then we go play. Then we take a bath. Then we have our nighttime snack. Then we read a book. Then we go to bed. You try to make those things in a different order, and it is just not going to work with her. Like, she's like, no, I haven't had my snack yet. We have a snack. And I'm like, oh my goodness, because I'm like, fly by the seat of your pants, right? And so that doesn't work very well for her. Alrighty, so now as I go through, we're going to talk about some things that you can do to connect with this specific type of communication profile. And as I'm doing this, what I'd like you to do is circle the traits that you feel like your clients have. So as we go through D's, circle if you think that your clients are competitive, circle the word competitive. All right, so these D's are business owners and so forth. They're really they want to be to the point. They want to know about what results you're going to give them. They're very future oriented. Get to business. There's not a lot of fluff here. You don't have time to chit chat. Just get her done. And they love that. And so since a lot of business owners are this way, my staff has a lot of S's and C's and I's on it. So when they're writing, we tend to be a little bit more conversational or get into a lot of detail, but our audience is usually very brief and to the point. So when I'm editing content, I usually am deleting things. Not that they're not important things, but if it's fluff, it's got to go, because this D just wants it right in front of them, and that's it. So our I's will allow us to be more quirky and friendly. Make sure that you're asking them for feedback. They're probably the people that'll fill out that survey for you. And get excited, like lots of excitement there. Maybe put a rainbow or a smiley face on something. Now, for those S's, we really want to remember the little things and know that they're really interested in human interest. It's not about them, it's about the people that they take care of. So making sure that we're showing them how we're going to help take care of the people that they take care of, that's where it's at for those S's. And give them time because they need it. And then for our C's, go into details. They really want to know the nitty-gritty, which doesn't mean you're going to put it all in the same post, but it does mean that you might go more into detail for them than you would with anyone else. So another thing with C's is generally they're a little bit more formal. So if your audience is mostly C's, you may call them Mr. or Mrs. Smith. Now to you, if you're an I, you're like, oh my gosh, Mr. Smith, geez, that just seems so, you know, out of date. But for Mr. Smith, it feels very comfortable. And so making sure that you're making Mr. Smith feel comfortable is the ultimate goal. So our C's like to reflect on the past, what worked before, in contrast to the D's who want to know what's in the future. So if I'm talking to the D's, I'll be like, all right, here's the newest up-and-coming thing. This is where people are going. We need to go there now. With our C's, I would say, all right, here's a survey that says that X percentage of people do this. It has worked for them. So I think that we should do this. And they'll be like, okay, sounds great. And it doesn't matter what style you are. Everybody loves to see their own name. So if you are doing email marketing and have the ability to put somebody's name in, put somebody's name in. Because it will definitely improve your open rates and your response rates tremendously, because it makes people feel special, and everybody wants to feel special, and that's really what we're talking about, right? All right, so we just looked at what communication style you were. You checked the boxes, and then you circled the things that your readers are. And if you are different from your readers, that's okay. Like I said, there's no good and there's no bad. You just need to be aware. So if you have a tendency to over-embellish and you are speaking to a group of C's, just be aware of that, so that way you can edit your content down to the details and share what needs to be shared. We are getting a little bit of feedback right now, so if everybody who is dialed in via phone, if you could put your phone on mute unless you need to ask a question, that would keep the feedback down for everybody else who's listening. Okay, so I told you guys earlier that sometimes you do have to talk to a lot of people, right? And they are very different. But that we can't talk to them all the same way, right? So this is where buyer personas come in. So buyer personas, I had never even heard of them until like a year and a half ago, and I was like, what are these buyer persona things? So buyer personas are fictional representations of your ideal customers. Now the information that you use to describe your ideal customers is not fictional. It's real data that you may have found in demographics reports, that you might get from your website, that you might gather from sales meetings, surveys, all kinds of interviews, lots of different ways to understand what your buyers' histories, motivations, and concerns are. But you create buyer personas for the different people that you're trying to connect with, so that way you can connect with them personally about what their issues and concerns are, instead of just writing to everyone. So that might mean that your one message will be written 3 different ways, and that's okay. So there are different components to a buyer persona, and I'm going to go through them. There are 10. There's 10 different components. So the first one is their background. So what is their role? What is their role either in their life or in their company? Do they have a certain education level? Once again, education about your product or formal education. Do they share hobbies? For example, if you are speaking to a lot of business people, one thing that they all have in common is that they probably sit in front of a computer, which sounds strange, but it's something that everybody has in common and they can all relate to. So demographics. Is there a gender, an age range, a household income? So for household incomes, too, like to wrap your mind around why this would be relevant, the household income with only $50,000 for the entire house versus $400,000 for the entire house is a lot different. It feels a lot different. They make money decisions differently and they view their income differently. Also know that a house who is a blue-collar household versus a white-collar household make monetary decisions differently. So knowing who this person is and how they value money and where their money challenges might be can help you better talk about your product or service in a way that helps them feel comfortable. And then identifiers, so buzzwords and mannerisms. And with buzzwords, I would put in like misconceptions maybe. When I say misconceptions, I mean, are there words that they commonly use that mean something else? And so there's always people that will come to you as prospects that are just, they don't know what that word means. And so if they don't know what that word means, for example, SEO, I'm not going to run around and say SEO, 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 right? Because a lot of people don't know what that means still. But they might come to me, and if they do know what it means, I need to understand what it means to them because it's a buzzword, and it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. And another good example of buzzwords or terminology is people will say the buttons on their website, and I say, okay, the buttons on your website, tell me about those buttons, where are they? And they'll say, oh, they're up at the top, you know, they're all in a line, and I say, all right, are they the buttons that go to all the pages within your website? And they say yes, and I say, okay, let's call those navigation, because there could be buttons all over in any page. If we use navigation, that means that's a part of your site that links out to all the other pages on your website. And making sure that we clarify that that's what those words mean. Okay, so this information can be found by administering surveys or also by talking to senior representatives within your company who have been there for a while. So goals are a really important thing to understand, especially if you are doing business with the general public. Like, what is their goal? Why would they need this service that you have to offer them? Or what is their company, not their company, but their professional goal? If you're talking to somebody who's in a large organization whose goal is to move up through the corporate ladder, that's a good thing to understand because you can use that as you're writing to them. And then this is where I think a lot of topics come about, what you need to talk about with these people in your online writing. So challenges. What are they facing? What is standing in their way to success? And especially if you are consulting with families, like for example, my husband used to help families plan and build custom homes, and he would say, Monica, I swear I'm like a marriage counselor, because first we have to figure out like who the decision maker is in the family, and like what they really even want or why they're not communicating to each other what they want. So a lot of the times in his relationships with his clients, the biggest challenge that many of them would be having is convincing their husband that they should be spending more money on their house, or convincing their wife that they should spend less money on the house, you know. So that's a pretty big challenge to overcome. And then how you help them solve that challenge. What is it about your process that's going to help them overcome the challenges that they face on a daily basis, or help them achieve their goals? And one good way to figure this out is conducting interviews with past clients or with people within your target market to discover what their goals and challenges are in more details. And also ask them. All right, so real quotes. I like real quotes. I like to put them in with my buyer personas because I remember hearing them. I'm an audio person, and I heard my business owners and my clients say these things, and I think, oh, that is so them, right? So, for example, a lot of the people that we work with at May Create say, my clients are my #1 priority. I put them at the top of the list. I am going to take ultimate care of the people that are my clients. And I think that is so great. And when I hear someone come in as a prospect say those things, I'm like, oh, you fit in with the rest of my people. I get you. Like, you care. That's awesome. I can work with people that care. I love people that care, right? So this will help you also, put yourself in the proper mindset for who these people are. Common objections. So what is it that is throwing them off when you're in your sales process with them? And common objections could be things that are commonly not true. So is it something that they come to you and say, well, you could, this, I think this, and it's not a true statement. So in that case, you want to clarify. You want to educate through your online marketing. This isn't a true thing. Let me clear this up for you. I'm an expert. I want to make sure that you have a clear picture of what's going on in my industry. Or it could be a true objection. So, for example, if you install in-ground pools for a living, and that is what you do, one of the common objections might be it's too expensive. And so don't ignore that. Don't just say, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. It's obviously expensive. No. Let them know that you heard them. I hear your objection. I hear that you say that this pool is too expensive. I understand that. A pool is a big investment. Let's talk about the reasons why you could benefit from a pool. What is it this pool is going to do for you for years to come? Could it improve the resale value of your home? Could it give you, you're going to spend less on pool memberships for your kids. Maybe your family is going to spend more time together. It's all based on what this person's values are that you would explain the objection. But don't just ignore it because it's not necessarily positive for you. Make sure that you listen to what they say and address it so they know that you heard them, and address it in a way that they will understand the benefits of it anyway. So one nice thing about common objections and identifying them is you can really help your sales team. You can help them in 2 ways. One, they'll be like, oh, well, I now know a way to answer that objection because it's on the website and I've read it, and I can have a clear, concise way of combating it. But then on the other hand, you can also kind of alleviate that stress from them because you've already addressed it. And if the buyer had that objection and they read about it on your website, they can come in more educated, more prepared to buy, and less leery of whatever it was that was holding them back. Okay, last 2 things. One, your marketing message. So that's sort of what we just described in the pool example, is how should you describe your solution to your persona. So if this persona has young kids and loves to spend time with their family, then the way I would describe the pool objection is that you are going to spend so much more time with your family when you have the swimming pool in your yard, because you're going to have this wonderful thing that you can all do together as a family. Not price. They might not be worried about price. They may make, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars a year. Price isn't even the issue. It could be a family thing. So making sure that you're describing it to them in a way that resonates. And then you share that same answer, that elevator pitch that you just described in your marketing messaging, throughout the rest of the company, so that way everybody has the same vocabulary and the same pitch, so to speak. That way the person who answers the phone doesn't start talking about something and not have a correct perception of it, transfer the phone call over to sales or account service, and then they're like, no, that's not it. I'm sorry. Pools are expensive. We're not giving a half off discount or whatever it is. So that elevator pitch can come in handy. All right, so last but not least, one thing that is cool to do and what I would suggest to people is, put your buyer personas together, put them in a binder, put them, or, try to cram it on, a few sheets of paper, and then put a face to it. Like, get a stock photo of a person that meets this demographic and then give them a name. So that way, whenever you're writing to this person, you can look and you can say, here's Betty. I see Betty. Betty is a 65-year-old woman, and she's got 5 kids, and she lives in rural America. And that way you know, hey, okay, this is Betty, and I'm talking to Betty. And it's a lot easier to talk to Betty than it is to talk to a hypothetical person who has, 5 kids and lives in rural America. Alrighty, so just my reflective question here is, who are you talking to? Who are the people that you're speaking to?